Hi, this is Matt with Bob Johnson's computer stuff. Today we're going to be doing a video on how to do a screen replacement on a non-touch CF-53. The steps are the same on a 53 Mark 1 or Mark 2. The first thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and flip your computer over and remove the battery. You'll have to remove the case, the battery cover, which is on this side here, the side with the side USB ports and the PC slots and the power port. There's a little groove in the side right here. You grab it and push or pull up, and it should come up. Sometimes it sticks a little bit. It actually looks like this one's broken a little bit, but yeah, this one's broken, so it's not wanting to come up. Just give me a second. This cover's broken. For you, all you should have to do is just pull it up and it'll come up. This one, the cover is cracked and broken, and so it's not coming up easily. But once you have the cover up, there's a little switch on the bottom. You push that up and then you pull the tab on the battery and pull the battery out. That should always be your first step whenever you're working on opening up a computer to replace any internal parts. The next step you're going to want to do, you need to remove this cover here, where the power button is, right above the keyboard. There's 3 screws holding it down. You're going to go ahead and just remove those 3 screws. Be careful not to lose any screws along the way, and keep track of where you're removing the screws from. Now, once you remove those screws, you got to close it, and then you got to use your fingers to like squeeze the hinge covers in the back here, and you'll hear it pop a little bit as they pop out of their position. And then you'll open the screen back up, and you can grab the cover here and pull it up now that it's unscrewed and popped out of position in the back. Okay, so the next step you're going to need to do, if you're replacing just the screen, there is a couple of plastic covers, one on each bottom corner, and there's 2 right on either side of the hinge of the latch on the screen latch, and then there's rubber bumpers on both upper corners of it as well. Those all need to be removed, and there's screws underneath of them that need to be removed. The best way that I've found to do it is either with a flathead screwdriver with a very thin tip, with a knife, which is what I'm going to use now. It's just a standard box cutting knife. Or you can use a putty knife as well, or scraper, or whatever you want to call it. Basically, it just has to have a flat, thin edge that allows you to get underneath the groove. There's just rubber cover bumpers on each corner, which I always take out first. Now, the little plastic covers are a little bit harder to take out without damaging them. You got to get right under the corner with the tip of the knife or whatever you're using, and carefully get under the corner. Be very careful, because you can scratch it up while you're doing this if you're not careful. Once you're under the corner, you can just carefully lift it up, and it's just a small black plastic cover piece. that covers the screws. And there's 4 of those in total that you need to remove, 1 on each bottom corner and 2, 1 on either side of the lid latch. Okay, once you remove those covers, there's screws under each of those covers that we just removed. You'll need to remove those screws. Keep track of which screws come from which hole. There's 4 silver screws. The 2, they're on each corner. The 2 on the bottom corners are a little bit thicker than the ones on the upper corners. And then the ones on either side of the lid latch they're thinner black screws. Just keep track of where you're removing all the screws from. Now the next step, you have to have some kind of flat instrument to carefully remove. There's a bunch of plastic clips holding the front bezel onto the back bezel. Now that the screws are removed, you got to be careful when you're doing this part, because you can very easily break the front bezel while you're doing it if you're not careful. You need to get something with a flat edge. You can use an old credit card or credit card placeholder, or you can use a putty knife or a flathead screwdriver, and you're going to want to carefully get underneath the groove and just carefully pry your way around it. Just don't put too much pressure on it, just a little bit at a time, and it'll pop the plastic tabs off. You got to be careful because you don't want to break any of the tabs, so you got to move carefully and slowly so as to not break anything. Now this step is actually a little bit easier if you take the screen off by the hinges, but there's more steps to be able to do that. It makes it a little bit easier getting this part off, but if you don't put the hinges back on, put it back on at the hinges just right, it won't latch closed properly. So I prefer not to do it that way. And then you just kind of lift up. If it's the first time the screen's been open, it might be a little more difficult than it just was for me to lift it up. Just be careful not to break anything. Just gently lift on it and pull on it until it comes up. Just be careful not to break anything. Mine came up a little bit easier because I had this open earlier in the week to diagnose the screen as being bad. Okay, so once you have that removed, you can just set it down carefully. If you have a microfiber rag to sit on underneath of it, you can. It's not really necessary in my case because this screen's bad. So it doesn't matter if it gets scratched up or anything anyways, because this screen is bad and needs to be replaced as is. Now, the next step is to remove the screen cable from the screen. There's a little piece of yellow tape here holding the screen cable down, and then you can lift that up carefully, and there's a semi-clear cover, plastic adhesive cover over top of the connector to the screen for the screen cable. You want to carefully lift that up and just set it to the side for now, and you'll want to carefully remove the pins, the cable connector. You just either use your fingernails or get a flathead screwdriver and carefully push on either side of it to gently remove it. You don't want to force it. If you force it, you can bend the pins and mess up the cable, and then you would have to replace the cable as well. So like I said, just be careful in the process. The next stage is to actually remove the cover, the front bezel from the screen. But before we do that, you want to be careful doing this specific part. I always check to make sure that the screen works, the new screen works, before I finish putting it in, because it'd be an awful lot of hassle to put everything back together just to find out that the screen you just put in doesn't work for whatever reason. So what I always do is just carefully pull out your replacement screen, sit it down carefully. Most of the times there will be a plastic cover film, which is actually on this one, that you will need to remove before installing it completely. But this is just for testing purposes to make sure that the screen is actually good. Go ahead and seat the cable back in lightly. Make sure it's in place. And then I always just take the screen and sit it in it in the position it'll usually sit, roughly the position it'll usually sit. And then go ahead and be careful not to touch anything other than what you need to turn it on. But plug it back in real quick and turn it on just to make sure that the screen works. Because like I said, it can be quite frustrating if you spend all the time putting the screen in just to come to find out that it doesn't work. You can't really see too well but the screen on this is working. So we're going to go ahead and just remove the power from it again, shut it down, remove the power again, and we'll go back to putting it in. Like I said, I always test it before I put it in, because it's a lot of work to prepare the screen to go in, just to come to find out that it doesn't even work. So it's just one extra step that can save you some hassle in the end. So I always do that beforehand. Now back to where we were, you need to remove the screen, from the old screen, from the bezel, which if your screen's bad anyways, you don't have to be quite as careful, but you still want to be careful when you're doing this. You can either use your hands to pry it off, but you can easily break something in the process doing that. Or if your screen is damaged, you can always just use some kind of tool with a flat edge to go around the inner parts. There's like a light adhesive that holds the screen to it, and you can just pry it off. It's just a little bit of two-sided tape that is used to hold the screen to the screen bezel. And you want to try to save as much as the two-sided tape as you can for when you reapply the new screen to the bezel. So this is what the bezel looks like without the screen in it. Just sit that to the side for now. Oftentimes when you order a replacement screen for the CF-53, it'll come with just the screen. It won't come with all the padding that goes around the screen. So you'll have to carefully remove the padding and transfer it to your replacement screen. I advise doing this very carefully, one piece of padding at a time. You're going to want to use a flat instrument, a putty knife, a box cutting knife, or a flathead screwdriver, something with a flat edge that you can get up underneath of it and carefully remove the covers. And you're for the side ones, there's a little piece on the bottom, a little piece on the top. I advise just starting at the bottom and then working your way down the side. There's a little bit of adhesive that holds this together, so just go down the side carefully. And like I said, I prefer to do this one piece at a time. And right after I get the first piece off, I just grab the replacement screen and I put it right where it needs to go on the replacement screen, just to ensure I'm putting everything where it should go and the position it should go. I just find it easier that way, so you don't get anything mixed up about where it should be. The piece on the bottom down here, you can just carefully lift that up usually, or if it doesn't want to come up, flat instrument will get the job done. Lift that up. Try to place it in about the same position on the other screen. There's a little piece of padding here. You want to get all of the padding off of the screen and transfer it to the replacement screen. And as with the front bezel, if you're careful removing this, you can salvage most of the two-sided tape, and everything should just stick back into place when you put it on the new screen. There's one last piece along the top of the screen that you need to carefully remove and transfer over. Now that you have everything transferred over, I always like to just sit it in place, get the screen protector, and lightly just place the screen bezel down. Before you put the screen in the screen bezel, you have to remove the protective cover. You won't be able to do it once it's in the bezel. So go ahead and remove any protective cover now. Once the cover is gone, you want to be as careful as you can be to not scratch up the screen. So be very careful, and then just line up the screen the best you can with all the padding into the screen bezel. You may have to move it around a little bit and carefully just work it into its proper position. Once you have it in position, go ahead and flip it over, take a quick look at it, see if it's lined up. It appears to be lined up fine. Go ahead and flip it back over and put the cable in its position. Put the tape back in position as you're putting it back together. Put the cable back in to the connector. Put the cover on. And lightly set it into position for now. Make sure the cable won't get caught on any of the casing when you go to clip it back in place. I always just lightly set it in place and then real quick put the power back on and turn it on real quick just to check and make sure it's lined up properly beforehand, before you finish putting clicking it in place and popping it all the screws back in. Just to make sure that the screen is connected properly and working. You don't want to put it all back together just to find out that there's something wrong with it. Just 1 second.
Oh, it's very positive.
Well, this one, I didn't notice it on my first inspection of having it turned on, but it actually does have a defect in this screen. But just for the purpose of the video, I'll show you quickly how you would reassemble it. I'm not going to completely reassemble it because I have to pull this screen back out now. But what you would do is you would just carefully, go ahead and remove the power from it again. You would just carefully squeeze along the edges to pop everything back in place. Be careful not to crimp any of the cables. Check carefully along the bottom because the cables will tend to get crimped down here. And then once you pop all the plastic tabs back in place, put the screws back into the position you removed them from. The two thicker silver screws go on the bottom. The two thinner silver screws, they're about the same size, but the top ones are slightly thinner, go on the top. The black ones go on the top, and then you put the covers back in their proper position, and you put the power button cover, the black plastic piece that goes above the hinges, and it covers the hinges and it goes above the keyboard. You'll put that back in place, put your screws back in, put your battery back in, and you should be all set. That's it for today's video. If you have any questions or comments, just let us know. You can contact us at our toll-free number of 877-202-7788. You can also contact us at our tech support email, which is tech_support@bobjohnson.com. Thank you. Have a good day.